Lesson 3.1 is dealing with inequalities. And their graphs. Can anyone tell me what an inequality is? What's an inequality? What's equality?
Like being equal.
Being equal. Two things have equal value, right? So an inequality is when they're not equal, okay? So that's where you see like the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. You remember those symbols? Yes? Bella does. Okay, so what we're going to do to start off is I'm going to give you a sentence and see if you can come up with an inequality phrase in symbol form for me. So if I said, write an inequality for this. All real numbers x, that's real, all real numbers x less than or equal to -7. Okay, all real numbers x less than or equal to -7. Here's what you have to do with this, okay? You kind of break it into phrases. So if we're talking about all real numbers x, that's just going to be x, okay? Then we have less than or equal to. Okay, does anyone know what that symbol looks like? Right, so less than or equal to is that symbol, okay? So that goes here. And then your last one is just -7. So when it says all real numbers x less than or equal to -7, we're saying x is less than or equal to -7. This symbol form is what you get from that sentence, okay? What if I said 6 less than a number k is greater than 13. Okay, now here's where it's a little bit tricky. If you think back to chapter 1, when we said 6 less than a number k, do you remember how we wrote that? Remember we did the whole less than, more than thing? What happened when we did less than and more than? I did a whole lot of this. We flipped them, right? Less than is what? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Less than. If I say 2 less than x, are we adding, subtract? We're subtracting, right? Okay, so when they say 6 less than a number k, that's k minus 6, okay? And then here's where your symbol comes in, is greater than. And greater than is the one that, I don't know, maybe you thought of it, maybe you had a teacher in the past that talked about Pac-Man or an alligator with inequalities. Did you ever have that? I feel like those are the common ones. So is greater than your Pac-Man or your alligator is going to open to the left. And then you have the number 13. So this would be your expression here. Okay, minus 6 greater than is greater than 13. Okay. So you'll be doing a little bit of that. Then you'll also be checking if something is a solution to an inequality. So we're going to do that next. That would be this. So the question is the number a solution of 2x plus 1, how would you say this symbol right now? Without a line under it. Is greater than, okay? So 2x plus 1 is greater than negative 3. So I'm going to give you a number. For this first one, we're going to say the number negative 3. So I want to know, is negative 3 a solution to that inequality? Do you know what you do with that? You plug it in, right? So you're going to plug it in for x. So it's going to be 2 times negative 3 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. Well, if you simplify that, negative 6 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. What's negative 6 plus 1? Negative 5. Okay, now here's where I feel like people tend to get a little confused. This is what, wait, what?
How did you just put a whole bunch of numbers real quick. I have no idea how you got.
I just simplified this, right? We started with this. 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6. So it was negative 6 plus 1. So I did negative 6 plus 1. And negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, right? I'm just simplifying the left side of my inequality.
Okay, so you just made up that negative 3 was.
I was just saying, is this a solution?
Oh, okay.
Like, if I plug it in, does it make it true? Okay? So we plugged in the negative 3, and we got negative 5 is greater than negative 3. Is that true? No, right? If you think about a number line, negative 5 would be here. This would be negative 4. This would be negative 3. This is smaller than negative 3, right? So when they say, is it a solution? We would say, no, this is not a solution. It doesn't work out, okay? How about negative 1? If we plug in a negative 1 for that, we would say 2 times negative 1 plus 1 is greater than negative 3, right? We're just plugging that number in for x. What's 2 times negative 1? Negative 2 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. What's negative 2 plus 1? Negative 1. So is negative 1 greater than negative 3? Yes, it is. If you think about a number line, that works out. So your answer would be yes, negative 1 is greater than a negative 3. Okay, so when they ask you, is it a solution, they're just asking you to plug the number in and simplify. Okay? Okay, so real quick, we're going to talk about how you graph these. So I'm just going to show you kind of the basic graphs of them, and then you'll graph a lot as you go. All right, let's say I give you n is less than 1. You're going to just make your own number lines for this. So a number line is going to look like this, okay? And all I need you to do is put one number on there. And the only number I need from you is the number that's in your problem, okay? So you're going to put the number 1 on your graph, and it says n is less than 1. Okay, so the first thing you got to know about graphing is you do an open dot for less than and greater than, and you do a closed dot for less than or equal to and greater than or equal to, because if it's equal to, it could equal that number, and if it's not, it can't. So you leave it open if it's not, you close it if it is less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So in this case, is this going to be an open dot or a closed dot? It's going to be an open dot. Okay, so we're looking at this setup right now because our symbol is less than. Okay, so if n is less than 1, we're going to put an open dot at 1. And then you have to figure out where we have to shade. So think about it. If n has to be less than 1, do you think we want to shade to the left or to the right? N is less than 1. So if we want to be less than 1, we said open dot here. Anything less than 1 would go this way. Okay, and here's a little trick for you. As long as your variable is first, you can turn that symbol into an arrow and it'll show you which way you need to point. So if I turn this into an arrow, it's pointing what direction? To the left, okay? So that helps every time as long as your variable's first, okay? Okay, so if my inequality is A is greater than or equal to 0, what's the one number that has to go on my graph? 0. Okay, so we're going to put a 0 here. Now you look at your symbol. Is this symbol going to get me an open dot or a closed dot at 0? It's going to be a closed dot because it includes 0. It could actually be 0. Okay, and what way do you graph it? What way do you shade your arrow? You're going to go to the right? If I turned it into an arrow, my arrow's going to the right. I want everything that's greater than or equal to 0. So 1 is greater, 2 is greater, 3 is greater. All these numbers are greater than or equal to 0. Okay? All right, what would f is greater than -3 look like? Open or closed dot? You have -3. It's going to be open because there's no equal to on it. Okay, so open dot. And which way do you shade? To the right, because it's got to be greater than. Okay, what if it was -2 is greater than or equal to x? Now be careful with this because your variable didn't come first. Okay, so you can rewrite it if you want. You don't have to, but you can rewrite it. What's the number that we're using? -2. So you're going to put a -2 there. Open or closed dot? A closed dot because it has that equal to, right? So a closed dot here. And it says -2 is greater than or equal to x. Now, if I were you, I would turn the whole thing around just to help you visualize it. So it would be the x here, the -2 here, and then you just flip your symbol. So if it's greater than or equal to right now, you're going to turn it into less than or equal to. Which way, God bless you, does your arrow go? You're going to go to the left, right? If I turn this into an arrow.
So you want us to switch it?
I don't care if you don't switch it, but you can't draw the arrow in here. It's not going to go to the right on that one. So if you want to do the arrow thing, then switch it. Put your variable first. But if you can see it, that -2 is greater than or equal to x, that you shade to the left with that, that's fine. Okay? Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Tell me what inequality you would do with this. Let's say I give you a graph. And the graph looks like this. Okay, so instead of giving you an inequality and saying graph it, now I'm going to give you the graph and say give me the inequality. So if this is my setup, you can pick whatever variable you want on these. I always just stick with x, but you may pick something else if you want. You need to figure out, is it greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to right now? Is it going to have the bar underneath, the equal to part for this? Yes, because it's a closed dot. Okay, so you know you're going to have the little bar. We know our number is -1. So is x greater than or equal to -1 or less than or equal to -1? Greater than or equal to, right? My arrow's pointing right, so we want it to point to the right now. Okay, what would this one be? Okay, if this is my graph, you know you're starting with your variable. What variable would you like to use? We'll go with x again. What number is going to go there? It's going to be a 4, okay? And then greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to? Less than. X is less than 4, right? It's the number that you're trying to come up with is going to be smaller than 4. Okay, so this would be your inequality. Okay? Do you need to go elsewhere? All right, last thing. Tell me what inequality you would write from this, okay? You go to, we'll say you go to Glen Oak, and it says you can do horse riding starting at $19.99. Okay, so you're trying to figure out what's the cost potentially. Now, in order for you to ride a horse, the cost is starting at $19.99. So if you were to write an inequality for that, what would it be? X is what? Less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. What's your number? $19.99, okay? So $19.99 is the number we're working with. It could be equal to, but it says it's starting at $19.99, so it's not just $19.99. Is that greater than or equal to or less than or equal to? If it's starting at $19.99, it could be $29.99, could be $39.99, right? So X is greater than or equal to $19.99. What if there was a sign on the freeway that said speed limit? What inequality does that represent? We'll say your speed has to be what? 65 is your number. What's your inequality? Right, if it's a speed limit, that's the most we can go, right, is 65. So you want to be less than, or you could be equal to, right? You're allowed to go 65. So your speed has to be less than or equal to 65. Does that make sense? Okay.